Hey, I'm Dan Moloughney, Ottawa Urban Realty, and this is just a daily update on what's going on during the crazy COVID-19 pandemic. Today is March 27th, 2020, and this is just some of the news, some of the stuff that's been coming up. I'm just going to share the info. If you have any questions, I'm happy to chat. Obviously, everything I say now could change in a few days because everything changes so quickly. So I'll try and make it fairly quick. We'll start with RECO, which is the Real Estate Council of Ontario. Here on the website, they sent out a notice, which seemed a little slow. No offense to RECO. It would have been nice to have instructions for realtors a little earlier. So basically, RECO enforces the rules put on realtors and for our legislation. So one of the main things is real estate is considered an essential service right here, but it's not business as usual. So I know in the Ottawa area, all the brokerages and the Ottawa Real Estate Board are strongly suggesting people don't show properties, and in particular tenanted properties, and I'll come back to that, there should not be showings. Vacant properties is probably okay, but I'll tell you what's happened in the last week or so. I haven't had a showing in several days now, as time goes on, but earlier last weekend, I guess, I was out. I had disposable gloves, shoes that I only wore in the house, so indoor shoes. Left my shoes outdoor, went into the house with the gloves on, and Lysol wipes provided by the seller were in the house, soap, and water by the kitchen. Well, obviously water, soap, and a towel by the kitchen sink. We were asked to wash our hands, leave our shoes outside, etc. These people were being very careful, and that's the right thing to do because we want to slow this. Now, why are people still looking at properties, and why are they still selling properties? Well, there's some people that are very motivated to move, whether they've already sold a place and they have to find somewhere to live, or they already bought a place and they have to sell their current house. Now, I think what'll happen over the next few weeks, there'll be less and less people going out, and then we'll probably, once things clear out, once the COVID-19 seems to have left Ottawa, we'll probably have a big upswing, and I talked about that in a different video. Anyways, back to the RECO website. Real estate is deemed an essential service. But they want us to minimize everything we do. Basically, right here, we're under a state of emergency, and registrants have a duty to follow the direction of the health officials to minimize direct physical interaction. Embracing digital technology is essential in order to reduce the risk of COVID-19 transmission. Here we go. We strongly recommend that registrants look at technological solutions that significantly reduce or eliminate the need for these in-person interactions. So basically, what I'm telling clients is, let's go see what's going on, wait this out for, if people aren't in a rush, and then see how things are later, because certainly it's an odd market to be in right now, and we're coming out a very strong seller's market as well, as most people know. Here's another point. Particular attention must be paid to the tenant's health and safety. Now, I said earlier you can't show tenanted houses. It's actually brokerages in Ottawa have put out a policy saying you can't show our tenanted properties, and what I think will happen is most of the tenanted properties that were or currently are on MLS will either be suspended or canceled for the short term, but we shall see. Now, as a registrant, that's what a realtor is. I'm registered with RECO, and I'm actually what's called a broker of record. It means I run the brokerage. I'm allowed to decide what services I would offer. So basically, I don't have to show any clients' properties, but they can choose not to work with me anymore. Same with listings. If somebody said, I need to list today, it needs to be sold in 3 weeks, well, I'd say, okay, well, let's figure out the best way to do this, because there is ways to do this with technology. Eventually, someone has to see the home, but there's even ways to get into a conditional sale prior to somebody visiting the house. So we can figure this out. and we can move forward if you really need to. Although generally my suggestion will be to wait a little while. Okay, and that's the next point. There are no clear alternative. Is no clear alternative to certain in-person aspects of real estate. So Rico's basically saying they don't have all the answers. We've never been through this before. Rico hasn't been through this. I don't know of any realtors in Ottawa that have been through a pandemic, or most likely Canada, or I'm sure somewhere there's been a time when showings had to stop, but we are trying our best to figure this out for the people that do need to make decisions in the short term. How does the government's announcement impact Rico's services? Basically, their business as usual. I'm sure they're working from home. You may not care, but they don't have any authority to tell us to stop trading in real estate in Ontario. They can actually stop a particular person from trading or a brokerage if they break the rules, but there's no actual legislation for the rules in the situation we're in. So we're all kind of flying blindly here. Once again, they want us to follow the recommendations of the health officials, and then that's it. Okay, what do we got here? The next one here. This $2,000 a month if you're not working, regardless of income. This is not necessarily real estate related, but it will help some people get through this time. Now, if you're self-employed, this could be very helpful. I'm self-employed. I don't know if I'll be eligible or not. But it is going to be a tight year, I think. All right, let's skip to the next story. Here we go. So this is from the Globe and Mail, posted 8 hours ago. 200,000 mortgage deferral requests in the first few days. So from the 6 big banks, that's how many calls and requests they've had to defer the mortgage. And I know also unemployment insurance had 1 million requests in the last week, I believe, and that's just like 900,000 more than they've ever done in a week or something. Maybe that's a bit high, but so what's going on with that? The banks are not set up to get these many people calling them, emailing them, questioning them about the deferrals. The deferral is for somebody that cannot pay their mortgage. They just lost their job. They're not going to be paid. That's what it's for. If you're worried that maybe you're going to lose your job later, then you should wait. So some of you may know I'm also a mortgage broker. So I've been listening into different calls and discussions from mortgage lenders, banks basically, some of the smaller banks and some of the bigger banks. They can't handle all the calls and they're frustrated that people are calling if they're not really in a situation that's dire. The other point to make is that this deferral is not a mortgage holiday. There will be interest added, that the interest you're not paying this month and next month and the next month will be added to your principal, calculated in some way. It's not free money. You need to pay your mortgage if you can, and that is what I heard, and that's my understanding, and that's what makes sense. The banks are lending out the money, and they should be paid if you can pay. If you're in a situation where you can't pay, get a hold of the bank right away. Now, I know that some banks are offering a start of 3 months mortgage deferral, and some are offering 6 months. So it depends on your bank. Right here, I saw, well, actually here, this is First National, which is one of the smaller banks in Canada. They were offering 3 months, I think, to start. And I believe I heard a call with people from TD that they are starting at 6, but don't quote me on that. I could be wrong. I know some are offering 6, and there's different programs, and everybody's just trying to figure this out, right? Like I said multiple times, this is new to everybody. Oh, yeah, by the way, it's a beautiful March day here in Ottawa, March 27th, so I thought I'd put on my summer shirt. That's why I'm wearing pink, but it is March 27th. Okay, so here we go. Yeah, so First National is doing 3 months, and you must confirm in writing that you've had a disruption to your income or employment as a result of COVID-19. So the result might just be, hey, your work is closed, no one can go in. But let's say you are a government worker or high tech or some type of service industry that can be done online, obviously not a restaurant or something. then you probably haven't lost all your income due to COVID-19. Now, if you work in a restaurant that's not doing deliveries or takeout and you've been sent home and said, we'll call you in a month when this is over, or 2 months, then you've obviously have direct impact. So have their loan to value lending guidelines changed? They have not. And this is just again for First National. Now, the other thing they said during these calls are, so closings will continue. Most banks, once they've committed to you, so let's say you've have a firm purchase on a property, and the bank has, and you've signed the commitment, and then you lose your job or get laid off just before closing. It sounds like the banks will still stand by the commitment because they expect this to blow over in months or who knows how long. But don't quote me on that. The other thing I heard a lawyer say is when you go into the lawyer to sign the papers, you don't need to give more information than what you're asked. If the lawyer has questions, now the lawyer, when you're buying, represents the bank as well. So the bank will have questions that the lawyer they have instructed the lawyer to ask you. Answer those questions. Do not give any more information. If they say, has your income been reduced due to COVID-19? Tell the truth. But if they don't ask you, you don't need to say anything. Okay? All right. Another one on deferred mortgage payments. What's this? CanadianMortgageTrends.com. This was out yesterday, I believe, if I remember correctly. 25th, 2 days ago. All right. So 6 major banks would offer deferral payments. Oh yes, this is the important thing. Will it affect your credit score? So Equifax says it won't. And I believe TransUnion said it won't. The thing is that if your payment doesn't go through, even if your bank says you've been deferred, say for 3 or 6 months, there is a lot of automated systems within the bank for sending info to Equifax, TransUnion, and it could be that you get flagged as missing a payment even though you had the deferral in place. Now, and the bank might not even be looking for the money. It might be that it's an issue with the system. We've got a lot of systems here that are already set up for handling mortgages and real estate in Canada, and we're in a whole new situation. Think of the Phoenix system. Who knows? This could be, everything's changing. And so anyways, the point of this story here on Canadian Mortgage Trends is that you might still get flagged as missing a payment even if you're on a deferral, and that could affect your credit score. Now I believe it could be in the 40 to 50 point range on the credit score if you miss one payment. Now you can get that back if you continue with your payments, but the question is here, are you willing to gamble your credit score and assume that every lender has updated its reporting system? If you need to defer, you need to defer. You will have to go back, you may have to go back and change or get that corrected on your credit score. You may not. If you don't need to defer, it might be better not to defer, is what this story is saying. So what does this say? In reality, it doesn't matter what the customer service rep, the government, or what the industry experts tell you. If the lender's internal system sees it as a late payment, that is how it will report. No one will know for sure if all these deferred payments will report correctly or not. Massive computer systems doing so many things automatically, which makes life easier for all of us, but in certain situations will make it more difficult. So, for those that don't really need to defer their payments this month, I suggest you wait until it is necessary. A deferred payment is not free money. Again, not free money. You will have to pay the lender back with interest. Again, this is Mortgage Trends story written the other day. I don't see. Oh, here we go. Richard Moxley was the writer. So just so nobody thinks I'm stealing any info here. A low credit score, regardless if it was caused by an error or not, will make it much more difficult to qualify for best rate financing. Now, it could be that you need to defer for a bit, let's say. Let's say this drags on a little longer. You've got enough equity in your house. You only get the 3 or 6 month deferral. Maybe it makes sense to refinance. But if the bank checks your credit rating and it's down by 80 or 120 points because the deferral wasn't set up properly, and all of a sudden you may not get the refinancing, or you may have to pay a much higher rate. So it's like kind of planning, for the worst case scenario. So what Mr. Moxley suggests is get written confirmation that the payment's being deferred, get the service rep's name and employee number so you can track it back, write down the date and time, again, tracking it back, make sure you have all your supporting documentation, track your credit scores for the next few months, and if you do see an error, reach out to your lender and credit reporting agencies to open up a dispute. They're I don't know for sure, like I said, no one's been through this before, but I think there's going to be a lot of disputes. We're going to be cleaning up this mess just on the credit side, I think, for a few years. But anyways, hopefully we don't. One more story here. So this is from REM Online, Real Estate Monthly. So it's an online Canadian, I think it's actually Ontario real estate magazine. Just asking questions and answers. One, has the government registration system closed down? No, it has not. So that's what we use. Lawyers use it to register the title of the home. So when you sell a house, you exchange, you get the money and you give the title to the buyer. So the registration system is done online, and it has not closed down. Here we go. Law firms must be able to complete every part of a transaction remotely. So they don't go into the city, they don't go into an office, they do it all remotely. Can buyers or sellers cancel their purchase and sale agreement because of COVID-19? No, there's no reason to. By the way, this was a story written by Mark Weissletter, who I believe is a real estate lawyer in Southern Ontario. He writes a lot for realtor information. Anyways, can a buyer or seller? No. Some people believe that because of the pandemic, anyone can just turn around and cancel their real estate agreement. This is not true. Here we go. These events do not give anyone the right to cancel an agreement. The only way a deal cannot close is if the government registration system closes down or the lenders cannot fund loans, which is not the case right now. What precautions can I put into an agreement right now to help make sure the deal closes? So this is for realtors. Remember, this information is generally for realtors, but I thought you might be interested. So there's multiple clauses he shares at the bottom of this article. And so one of them, the first clause, is to pay all the money on closing by wire transfer only, no checks, obviously no cash, when we don't use cash. And the other is to allow all documents to be signed and delivered electronically. This will avoid having to deliver any documents by courier. That's for the lawyers on closing. And the last one is to use a lockbox for the exchange of keys. So normally a buyer will go to their lawyer on the day of closing. Once the closing has occurred, title has been exchanged, the keys get sent to the buyer's lawyer's office, and the buyer picks up the key from the buyer's lawyer's office. What they suggest is we use a lockbox like we use on homes when they're for sale. If you use a mechanical one, lots of times we use electronic ones now, but if you use a mechanical one, the seller could leave the key in the lockbox and provide the code to the buyer's lawyer, and the buyer's lawyer can provide it to the buyer after closing has occurred. The buyer can go to their new house, open the lockbox with some instructions and the code, and get into their new house. Yay! And what happens right here if the government registration system goes down to permit either an extension of the agreement or a closing in escrow? I've actually never seen a closing in escrow in Ontario. I've been a realtor for coming up on 18 years in a few months, but in some places it's common. Really what it means is everybody's agreed to everything, the money's changed hands, but we can't register the change of title, which is the ownership. And that's what might happen if, back up here, if the government registration system closed down. Sometimes this could happen on Ontario if, for instance, on a Friday, the system closes at 5 o'clock and the lawyers don't get the job done. I'm not going to blame the lawyers, just things happen, especially in the summer before a long weekend, say at the end of June or July. They can close what's called an escrow. The title isn't actually transferred, but everybody agrees the title will be transferred on Monday. Everything else is done. So you can have a clause in the agreement of purchase and sale. You may not care about this, but it's something that if you're buying a house in the next little while, you might want to consider making sure your realtor adds in. What can people do to save deals where there are legitimate delays due to illness? Okay, we live in Canada. We are practicing real estate in Canada. You're buying or selling homes or investment properties in Canada. We don't really want to go to a judge. Judge doesn't want to see us. We don't want to go to court. We don't want to sue people. There are ways to figure things out that are fair and equitable to all parties, okay? So buyers and sellers and their agents should work together with their lawyers to try and resolve any issues. Deals can be extended on terms that are fair to everyone. And that's really the key. We're all having a difficult time right now. Moving is stressful enough. If there has to be delay for some reason, please do your best to not delay, but there will be times where there will be delayed, and let's try and be understanding of each other and try and move forward with the cooperation. Okay, so I hope you're well. I hope this wasn't too long. I hope the green screen doesn't look as bad as it did last time, but maybe it does. And hopefully the weather will stay beautiful. I wish you a great weekend. Take care.